What do you mean, channel update? Go ahead, do the intro, we don't have time. Welcome to the Soft Skill channel. My name is Sebastian Jung and I welcome you to the channel update August. Today I will say a few words about shortage of time and of course there's news about the channel. We discussed a lot of interesting topics in the past few weeks, starting with the video Can You Trust Me? This was quite fun to make. I think it also turned out nicely. It's certainly one of my personal favorites. After that, we continued our series on Schulz von Thun with a video about situational communication. By the way, with this video, we pretty much finished working through Schulz von Thun's well-known Miteinanderreden series. That is unfortunately not available in English. The title is literally translated Talking to Each Other. It consists of 4 volumes, where the 4th volume is, in addition to the first 3, it is a questions and answers book that supplements the original 3 volumes. And by now I presented to you all the big, important, major topics from this series. I will probably do a short book review where I provide some information about the series overall, where I explain which topics are dealt with in which volume and maybe give some overall critique, but we are pretty much done with those. This doesn't mean, of course, that we are running out of Schulz von Thun material. There are plenty more books he wrote or that he took a part in. And he recently published a new book. The title is literally translated Fulfilled Life. So it is not about communication. This is quite interesting. I think I will have a look at it in the near future. And there will probably be a book review on this channel later. Of course, we also had a book review in the last month, and there we had a look at Peter Drucker's The Effective Executive, which served as our introduction to the topic of management and leadership. Quite an interesting book. And a little bit of trivia. I presented to you Drucker's famous quote, "Efficiency is concerned with doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things." This quote was later picked up by Stephen Covey in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and there Covey modified this quote slightly. His version is, "Management is doing things right, leadership is doing the right things." I find this quite interesting. I think it is in the same spirit as Drucker's original quote. As I told you, I like the book, I like The Effective Executive, and I like the general approach Drucker has to things, because it is very down to earth, very pragmatic, and I especially like his approach to time management. I will say a few more words about this later. First, we will have a look at upcoming topics. Next week, we will discuss multitasking and we will figure out if this really works. This is an important basic topic for this channel, and it is a nice addition to our collection of videos about self-management. And another nice addition to that will come in the week after, where we look at SMART goals, at the acronym SMART. This is another important basic topic in the area of self-management that we will look at. And of course, we will have another book review, and this time we will look at another book by John Strzelecki. I already presented The Why Cafe by Strzelecki to you. His first book, one of his most famous books, he's especially popular in Germany. And this time I will talk about one of his other most famous books, which is The Big Five for Life. And this book fits the current context very well, because in The Big Five for Life, Strzelecki takes his philosophies and ideas from his previous books, The Y Cafe and Life Safari, and he applies them to the area of management and leadership. And this fits in nicely because we recently looked at The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker, so this will be very interesting. Last month, we celebrated 100 subscribers to this English version of the Soft Skills channel, to Soft Skills English. And this means, of course, that we get a custom URL, and now it is ready and usable. You can just type youtube.com/c/softskillsenglish. The C can be omitted, so just type youtube.com/softskillsenglish, and this will take you right to this channel, right to the English Soft Skill channel. Please provide this URL to all your friends and relatives and people you barely know. We are always happy to get more viewers on the channel. As I mentioned before, I like Peter Drucker's approach to time management, and I'd like to say a few words about that. This again is a topic that will become its own video at some point in the future. However, it might take a bit longer because, as you will soon notice, this is a bit of an overview, and a lot of the topics I'm going to mention we haven't covered yet, but we will do so in the future. We have some work left here. Now, what I like about Drucker's approach is when he deals with time management, the very first thing he does is some analysis, some self-observation, figuring out where the time actually is spent. And this is, of course, quite pragmatic and common sense and obvious. However, it is hardly ever done. Usually, if I read something about time management, self-management, it starts right away with explaining the method, the technique, the approach you are supposed to use, and whether this actually fits your specific situation, your problem. This is of no concern. So what I recommend to you, as Peter Drucker did, is if you have problems in regard to time management. For example, if in the evening you frequently say, oh well, this day didn't turn out as I wanted. I didn't manage to finish a lot of those tasks that I wanted to do today. I'm not content with how this day turned out. In such a case, first thing you should do is some analysis, figuring out what you actually spend your time on. To do this, you create a short log where you write down what did I do at what time. And how exactly you do this is entirely up to you. You can do it on your computer, on your smartphone. You can do it on a piece of paper, in a notebook, whatever. Entirely up to you. The important thing is that you really do it throughout the day, while you actually do things, while you actually live through the day, that you don't do it in the evening from memory. We don't have a very good perception of time. Our memory can't be trusted here. So really create it throughout the day while you do things. And once you have finished your day and finished your log, have a look at it. As Peter Drucker says, you will probably be surprised. Apart from this log that tells you what did I actually do during the day, you should also have your to-do list, your list of current tasks ready, so you can answer the questions: what did I have planned for today? Which tasks did I plan to work on today? And what are in general the tasks that are currently open, my current to-dos? And once you have all this, you can try to figure out where exactly your problem lies. One possibility is that you had planned to do certain things that were important to you, that are important to you. However, you ended up other things because you ended up doing things that were urgent. Crisis, current problems that came up and needed immediate attention. So urgent tasks replaced and pushed away the important tasks. If this frequently happens for you, then setting priorities is an important topic. You can have a look at Peter Drucker's Effective Executive or at Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Both discuss setting priorities, and they especially deal with the issue of urgent tasks replacing important tasks. Another possibility is that you had planned to do important tasks, but you ended up doing something else because you avoided those important tasks. For example, you ended up watching your favorite series again, but you didn't do the tax declaration you had planned to do. Or your apartment is all shiny and clean now, but you didn't start this important white paper for university you had originally planned to do. In such cases, you might have a problem in regard to procrastination. We discussed the problem of procrastination extensively in this channel. I will link to the corresponding videos in the video description. Another possibility is that you planned to work on certain tasks and you actually did. But at some point it came to your mind that, oh well, there is this super important thing. I totally forgot about that. Well, that is what I should actually have done. This is what I should have worked on very first. This is actually most important, but it totally slipped my mind. I totally forgot about it. If this appears frequently for you, you probably have time tracking that isn't very good. Another indication of this would be if your tasks are spread everywhere instead of being collected in one place. For example, if there are some post-it notes with important to-dos, and in your email inbox there are some important mails that contain important tasks, and there is a note here and a list there, and there are those 3 things where you said, oh well, I can remember those, I don't need to write them down. Well, it was 5 things originally, but whatever. And yeah, things are spread everywhere and not collected in one place. And if this is your problem, you might want to acquire a better task tracking. There are a number of possibilities for that. There are plenty of apps and tools that can help you with your task tracking. And if you prefer to do it in an analog way, you can use a notebook. There is a nice technique to systematically use a notebook for task tracking that is called a bullet journal, and it was developed by Ryder Carroll. I will provide a link to his website in the video description where you find a nice tutorial. Another possibility is that you did work on the important tasks, on the ones you had planned to work on. However, you spent an excessive amount of work, an excessive amount of time on a single task. For example, you had to write a simple letter, cancel some subscriptions, something like that, and you read it again and again, looking for spelling mistakes, wondering if maybe you could phrase it better. You made small changes to the formatting again and again. You tried different fonts and whatever, and you never managed to really be content and to say, oh well, this is finished, this is good as it is, I can now move on to something else. So perfectionism made you spend way more time on a single task than you should have. If this is a problem for you, The Pareto principle or 80-20 rule is an important topic for you, and you might also want to look into diminishing returns, which is also important. And again, we will talk about those topics in future videos on the channel. Another possibility is that, again, you worked on the important tasks, but you didn't really get a lot of things done. You didn't manage to make a lot of progress, but not because of perfectionism, but because you didn't really manage to be productive. You didn't manage to be focused on a task. You sat on the computer with a pencil in your mouth and I don't know. And maybe you got distracted easily, so you had problems really being productive. In such a case, you might want to look into the concept of flow that was discovered and described by the psychologist Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. This is an interesting topic for you, and a specific technique you can try is the Pomodoro technique. And it might also be a similar situation that you don't manage to be productive. You have trouble really working, really doing some focused work on your tasks. There you might also have a problem in regard to motivation, that you have trouble motivating yourself to work on the tasks that you are not fond of. And this is, of course, quite a big and complex topic. We already discussed the Rubicon model of action phases that deals with motivation, and there will probably be plenty of future videos about different aspects of motivation, so there will certainly be more to come. So once you have figured out what actually happens with your time, where you actually spend your time, you can try to figure out what the actual problem is, what the actual deficit is, and then you can use a method, a technique that specifically targets this problem, that fits your situation, and then you have good chances that you can actually make some progress and make some improvement, and that this technique will actually be helpful to you and will actually work for you. I hope you will find the time to give the video a like and maybe write a short comment. And if you didn't subscribe to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. I would be quite happy to have you as a subscriber. I hope you will have the time to join us again next week when we discuss the topic of multitasking. For today, I'll take my leave. Have a nice day. See you next time.